Hi there, you are listening to the Guitar Speak podcast. My name is Matt Wakeling and thank you so much for joining me. Well, there's been some really great stuff going on. Last week, of course, we spoke to Michael Dolce and Charles Cilia from Cilia Guitars, and we sat in on the Michael Dolce Guitar Masterclass. That was awesome. That was so good. And it was great to meet all the guys there. And Michael and Charles headed down to the Melbourne Guitar Show, which by all accounts was fantastic. I was super jealous I couldn't get there, but yeah, it looked like a really fantastic weekend. Well done, Rob Walker and all of your team. And it was great to see some other of our Guitar Speak podcast friends down there. Brett Kingman was down there doing some jamming and some workshops, as was Bob Spencer, and of course Michael and Charles, who we mentioned. Hey, speaking of Guitar Speak podcast friends, Michael Fix, absolutely brilliant acoustic fingerstyle guitarist. We interviewed him way back in episode 3. I got Michael's email newsletter today, and there's some really great news. He's finished recording his new CD, Bending Air, which is going to be launched in Europe in September, and then Australia in mid-October. And he's just about to head off to his annual Europe tour. He gets over there every year, plays a whole bunch of gigs. He'll be in Germany, Italy, Austria, and for the first time, Scotland. So that's cool. All the best, Michael. Hope it is a great success. He's also will be at the Tuscany Guitar Camp in early September as well. So, hey, if you're anywhere near those countries, man, check out Michael Fix. He's well worth looking into. Such a great guitar player. Now, during that interview, Michael Fix spoke about the idea of having big brother figures in your life, mentors, people to encourage you along, and he spoke about Tommy Emmanuel very much being one of those figures in his life. I love that idea, not only in music and guitar playing, although that's certainly great, but just in life in general, having big brothers, big sisters, people who can show you the way, people who can lead you along, and people who will be an encouragement to you, who will be your cheer squad. Now today in the Guitar Speak podcast, I speak to Australian guitarist David Moyse. Now David was and is very much one of those figures in my life, very much a big brother figure. Now David in the late 70s joined a little unknown band called Air Supply, and within months they were smashing it in the United States with hit after hit, and he tells us that story. David also went on to become a very busy session player in the Sydney session scene, playing on film soundtracks such as the Crocodile Dundee movies. And later on, touring the world again with the Hillsong Worship Band. And that's where David and I met at church. I was just one of the guitarists on the roster, as was David. And for me in my early 20s to play with such a musician was just massive. Not only as a guitarist, but just Dave's encouragement to me meant a lot. So some years later, to be able to sit down and over the Wi-Fi have a chat with David about his guitar career was awesome. So here's part 1. I hope you enjoy it. My interview with David Moyse. David Moyse, welcome to the Guitar Speak podcast.
Great to be here, mate.
Great to have you. Hey, what led you to the guitar in the first place? When did you start playing?
I think probably as early as 7 years old. Heard Beatles, and it's that classic story of the Beatles. I think you can blame them.
Yeah.
I wanted an electric guitar from about 8 years old, and my dad didn't believe that I was serious, so he chucked me a ukulele and taught me everything that he had learnt during the Air Force. So I did pretty well with that. And then still wasn't allowed to have an electric guitar. Mm-hmm. They gave me a classical guitar at 10. So I did 3 years of classical training and a bit of Spanish right at the end.
Okay, yep.
And during that time, I somehow managed to get some old bits and pieces of, I think, a bolt-on neck Les Paul made in Japan.
Oh, yeah,
and I went out and saved all my scrap metal and bought a beautiful Fender. When I think about it, I've just realised it now. That neck is probably worth a lot of money now. But
yeah,
I went and glued it to this body. It was probably a 64.
Oh, wow.
Or 66 or something crazy like that, like a really old neck. Yeah, so I made a hybrid Les Paul Strat neck guitar, and that was my first electric guitar.
That's great. That's cool. And
Oh, with Fender thin line pickups too. I've still got those.
oh, okay. Like from a Telly thin line.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So a
nice.
pretty crazy looking guitar.
What happened to that guitar? Do you still have that
I
somewhere?
wish I knew, Maddie. I tell you what, if I could remember, if I could scratch the dark crevices of my brain and find out where that was, I'd try and find it again.
That's
I don't know.
cool.
I sold it, obviously. I gave it away.
Yeah, sure. And what did you plug it into?
Initially, I plugged that into a 5-stack radiogram.
Oh, okay. So the audio input or the mic input or whatever.
I just went across I think the center lug and one of the outside lugs of the volume control.
Oh, okay.
So you're talking back in late 60s, early 70s,
Yeah.
when everybody was throwing out their beautiful wooden radiograms and getting transistor radios because they were the cool
Okay.
hip thing.
Yep.
And it just so happened that down the end of 10th Avenue, St. Peter's, there was a dump. And I'd go down there after school
Hmm.
and pick up these old radiograms and drag them home.
Yep.
And Dad would show me how to fix them up. And I think my first true amplifier was, I think, 4 of those linked together. And man, it sounded awesome. I mean, it distorted like crazy, but it was like Hendrix all in my bedroom. It was beautiful.
That's great. So these are like old tube stereos. Were they
Yeah,
tube
well,
powered?
yeah. These were actually they were all tube,
Wow, cool.
but radios,
Yeah, yeah.
not record players. So
Okay.
I
Far
still
out.
remember my first gig was 2 doors down.
Yeah.
A girl called I don't know if she'll mind me calling her. Jane Mattinson had her birthday party, and my mate around the corner, Jim Finn, who runs a band in Sydney called Finn. We grew up together, like
Okay.
from one. So we got together and we had this raging. I think he was playing his Irish drums and I was playing my radio stack with my homemade guitar, and it was great fun.
That's great. So you were doing bands like garage bands and stuff pretty early on.
That was so the first sort of band thing was really just that, my
Yeah,
mate Jim
cool.
and I,
Awesome.
and then after that it was various things at high school, and I think the first kind of real playing band that I was in was we were called Alky Lane. It was drummer was Mark Meyer, who's from Moving Pictures.
Okay.
Uh, the rest of the players were all sort of accountants and what have you, who never really went on with music. But
Hmm.
Mark and I went to high school together,
Yep.
and that band did quite well in the covers kind of thing. I think I was 14 at the time.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, going into pubs with big mop of hair, 6 foot, barefoot, and fag hanging out of my mouth. So that band did pretty well, and it ended up changing its name some years later to Parker Band, and we moved to Perth for a short stint.
Okay.
And we were the backing band for Mark Williams.
Oh, okay.
Mark
So
Williams, yeah,
so were you in so you were brought up in South Australia, weren't you?
pretty much.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
yep. I
Sh-
left here at 18,
Okay. So you're
I
over in
think.
Perth, Mark Williams, the singer. Um,
We
great.
were there for about 2 months. Yeah,
Okay.
with the Parker Band, and
Yep.
that band was. I've actually jumped a step, but without sort of labouring it too much. Uh, the Alky Lane band, which was our kind of high school band,
Hmm.
turned into a band called the Jules Funk Band, played in a bar down here in Adelaide called Jules.
Okay.
Um, and there was this kind of rivalry, but friendly, very, very friendly. We were all good mates, between a disco called Bogarts down in Melbourne Street
Hmm.
and the Jules Funk Band. So in those days, we did this for about a year. The gig was you start at 9 and you finish at 5 in the morning, and you're 20 minutes on, 15 minutes off
Okay.
all night.
Wow.
All right. So how do you learn new songs? This is exactly what we used to do. And so all you guys listening to this is the best way to grow your musicianship.
Uh-huh.
You go upstairs in your 15-minute break with a cassette, stick it in, and it might be KC and the Sunshine Band or Sly and the Family Stone or one of these old bands,
Mm-hmm.
and would put on a song, and we'd all sit around and listen to the song, and you get to the point where you've got perfect pitch. You can hear. I'd listen to the guitar part, so we're just listening. We're not playing. We're just listening.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe jotting down a few notes if you need it, but pretty much just listening. And we listen to the song 2 or 3 or 4 times and go down and play it. And that's how we learn our songs.
Wow, that's great.
No charts, nothing. Just
Far
listen and go do it. So it was a really great skill to learn, to really sharpen your ears.
Yeah, yeah. And then that's in your repertoire for next week, and then you're learning a
Yeah,
whole
and
bunch
you
of new
just keep.
songs. Yeah.
That's it. Like, so I think it was maybe 4 times a week, 5 times a week.
Wow. Wow.
We'd do that
Yeah.
throughout the set. So yeah, you're constantly adding fresh stuff.
Wow.
Um,
That's got to
yeah,
definitely
so
sharpen your playing up.
yeah. Well, that particular band was again Mark Meyer. But the keyboard player was another high school mate, Cos Russo, who lives up down in Barrel now.
Mm-hmm.
Cos went on to work with Richard Clapton and Mario Millo. Did a lot of stuff with Mario Millo.
Oh, okay.
Brides of Christ, film score type stuff.
Yeah, right.
Doing like arranging the strings, conducting them, and all that sort of stuff. So he's still active.
Yeah.
And the bass player Brian Hamilton joined Air Supply with me later on, not a little bit longer on later on. And in fact, he actually got me the gig.
Okay.
And 2 weeks just before Lost in Love broke
Yeah.
in America, obviously Brian was getting a little bit itchy. He always wanted to play with Renee Gayer, so he got an invitation to join her.
Ah, okay.
And left the band and joined Renee Gayer. So
How's the
oops.
timing? Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Anyway.
I'll definitely get to the air supply in a moment. But
Yeah.
at this stage, so you're, I don't know, around 20 years old, and so you're playing 4 or 5 nights of covers a week.
Yeah, I was about 18 then, actually,
Oh, okay.
17, 18. Yeah.
So you mentioned the Beatles, but who else were you listening to? Who was sort of informing
Yeah.
your guitar development?
Definitely Hendrix, without a doubt.
Okay.
Yep. So yeah, I was listening to a bunch of Hendrix, Beatles, Floyd, Pink
Okay.
Floyd.
Yeah. Gilmore.
Yeah. In fact, later Floyd records had, but previous to Amagama and Darker Side, a lot of their stuff had a lot of impact on me.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of stuff. Mind you, I was probably doing a bit of the hooch by that time.
Okay.
So yeah, I was kind of probably drawn a bit that way, but yeah,
Sure.
but also people like funk players. I honestly don't know their names, but Sly and the Family Stone
Yeah.
had
Right.
a big impact on me when it came to groove.
Okay.
And that's groove is something I'm fairly passionate about, actually.
Yeah. 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 You've always had you've always been about finding the pocket and just sitting
Just
in
relax,
there. Yeah.
relax.
Yeah.
Actually, look, there's a little anecdotal story which you might want to edit in or might not want to, but it's kind of very relevant to the rest of my development as a musician. Not long before we finished playing at Jules, we had oftentimes visiting bands, whether they be interstate or overseas, would pop in and get up and have a blow to have a play. And Bobby Keys is a horn player, sax player that is just amazing. And we were loud, and we didn't have a microphone for him. He said, don't worry about it. And he blew us away. He was so loud. Anyway, that's not where I'm going. Then we had a band called Ossibissa that joined, and they came to Adelaide and came up and had a bit of a blow with us. And they were kind of a psychedelic funk band.
Okay.
And their little conga player came up, and he was playing the congas next to us and, just having a bit of fun. And we were launching into Long Train Running by the Doobie Brothers.
Yeah.
And Davey goes off and he's doing his solo and thinking it's sounding great. And I've become aware that the congas had stopped playing.
Okay.
And my eyes were shut, And then I opened my eyes, and this African American guy, lovely, lovely, sweethearted fella, um, eyeballing me, screaming at me and punching me in the chest. Speak to me, speak to me, And of course, you can imagine mid solo, you're freaking out, At the end of the night, when we were packing up, we sat down and had a chat, and he was the most sweetheartest guy I think I've ever met. I said, mate, what was that all about? He said, listen, Dave, you're great. You sound great. You're playing all the notes. Everything's great, but you're not saying anything. That's all you're doing is just copying notes. You're not actually telling me a story. You're not.
Wow.
I'm not hearing you. He said, if you haven't got something to say, don't play.
Uh-huh.
He said, I'm not being mean because technically it was fine, but if you're not there to move someone else's heart, don't play. So that changed my world.
Wow.
From that day
huge.
on. And I'll always encourage players to think that way. Find all the cool sounds, get all the great gadgets, but don't get them just because they sound cool. They've got to have a reason.
Yeah.
They've got and you as a player have to grow up and mature to the place where you actually want to say something. You want to move people's hearts. You want to encourage people. You want people to leave your concert or leave the earshot of your playing with a deposit where they go, wow, I feel better,
That's awesome. That's cool.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
So that was a pretty momentous time. It was good.
I'm just picturing this guy punching you in your chest as
Yeah.
as you're playing a guitar solo.
Yeah, it kind of freaked me out. He was only a little fella. Interesting thing, being a conga player, when you shake his hands,
Yeah.
his hands were soft as soft.
Oh, really? Wow.
So I don't know what his technique was. He was very loud, but I guess he just hit the skins in such a way that they were in concert, if you like, with the skin itself.
Wow. Awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, so you mentioned Air Supply. So, yeah, what were the circumstances that? Because those guys started in Sydney, I believe. So how did a guy from South Australia?
Well,
end up there?
the lads. Most people I guess know the history of Graham and Russell. They were the understudies in the first Australian production of Jesus Christ Superstar.
Yeah.
And
that's how they met,
band.
hey? That's how
That's
the two
pretty
of
much
them
how they met.
and started writing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. In the band, which was had Rex, Frank Esler Smith, Nigel Macaro, I think, and Jeremy Paul was also something to do with the cast as well. But Graham was writing all these songs, and when he heard Russell sing, he thought, "Man, this is." I want him to sing my songs. I want him to see, And they got together and just started mucking around, and really, obviously, they both realised they had something special. So they pretty much used the house band, if you like, and formed Air Supply and released their first album. And I believe their first single, or one of their first singles, was "Love and Other Bruises," which was a fantastic song. I still think it's one of the great songs he's written. Over you. I don't want to be alone. I'm all right loving you. I'm all right loving you. Love and other bruises didn't have to choose us, but it did. Rod Stewart's management heard the band and heard that song.
Yeah.
And through the then management, Bessel Reynolds, they got an opportunity to tour the States supporting Rod Stewart through 1976. From what I understand, for whatever reason, that tour didn't go so well for them.
Right.
I'm not sure why, but for whatever reason, they got back, and Graham disbanded the band and moved to Adelaide and moved into a flat that his brother owned, I think, or one of his relatives, which happened to be literally just around the corner from where I grew up.
Okay.
So yeah, so songs like Lost in Love, All Out of Love, yeah, and other songs called Love. Chances, a whole heap of songs were actually written in Adelaide in St. Peter's.
Okay. There you
Um,
go.
so we had, I hope you can follow this story. The Jules Funk Band had backed a couple of girls called Cheetah,
Hmm.
who were in the chorus of Jesus Christ Superstar.
Okay.
And they came to Jules and did their thing for about a month, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, when they heard that Graham was looking for a new band, they told them about us.
Okay.
So, as it would have, Brian got the gig, the bass player, got the gig to take Jeremy Paul's place. Because Air Supply's original lineup was Graham, Russell, and Jeremy Paul, three front guys, and Jeremy played bass.
Okay.
So Brian was pretty much Jeremy Paul's replacement. They were looking for a guitar player. Brian suggested me.
Right. Great.
And on a very balmy, lovely spring Saturday morning, Graham and Russell rocked up at my apartment down in Henley Beach. And we spent the day just playing and recording on my little recording system. Songs like Lost in Love and All Out of Love and Dreams, a whole bunch of stuff, actually.
Wow, cool.
And I recorded all these guitar parts that I thought would be nice, all these harmony guitar lines, and they really liked what I did, so I got the gig.
I'm so lost without you. I know you were right, believing for so long. I'm all out of love. What am I without you? I can't be too late to say that I was so wrong. I want you to come back and carry me home, away from these long, lonely nights. I'm reaching for you. Are you feeling it too? Does the feeling seem oh so right? And what would you say if I called on you now and said that I can't hold on? There's no easy way. It gets harder each day. Please love me or I'll be gone. I'll be gone. I'm all out of love.
So this is in around 78?
That would be, yeah, that was 78. That actually happened. So I guess I
Okay.
officially joined the band late 78.
Yeah, right. And then the album Life Support came out in 79 with all these tunes on it.
That's right. And so, yeah, that was an interesting exercise for me, Life Support, because that was the first, what I would say, my first real professional recording session. I mean, I've recorded heaps in Adelaide,
Hmm.
but not at that level with a producer like Charles Fisher.
Okay.
So I thought my guitar sounds were great.
Yeah.
I thought my guitars were in good order.
Yeah.
They weren't. They were not in good order, and my guitar sound sucked.
This
So
sounds familiar. This we'll get to this later when you produced me many years later. But anyway, I'm sorry. Please continue.
no, you're right, mate. Well, you know what I'm talking about. It's what I discovered was is that what you're hearing through the radiogram or what you're hearing through the record
Yeah.
player or through your headphones is not actually what what needs to be heard
Yeah,
when you're
sure.
miking and recording.
Okay.
So thus became the journey of just trying to discover tone
Yeah.
and understand what is actually a good tone. And even guitar setups. I mean, I'd set up heaps of guitars, but to find, I had this beautiful 345. It was one of Jim Kelly's old guitars.
Oh, okay.
I understand now why he sold it. Somebody. It was a gorgeous guitar, sounded great, played great, but you could not play it in tune. It was
Okay.
impossible.
Yeah.
Someone had scraped down the neck so thin that you just bend slightly forward and the whole thing would
Okay.
go flat.
Yeah. Right.
It was a bit sad, really, but yeah. Anyway, it was good. Peter Walker, who is I don't know if you know Peter. He's developed a thing called the whammy or the whammy bar. I think it's a device you can stick on an acoustic any guitar actually,
Mhm.
basically creates a synthetic. I'm not sure whether it's using I'm not quite sure how it works, but anyway, basically it puts a whammy bar on anything.
Okay.
But it does it through some sort of tone manipulation. Who knows? I don't know. I shouldn't talk about it. But it is commercially available now. Go down to your local store and buy it. The whammy by Peter Walker.
There you go.
Peter was he used to play guitar in a band called Bakery, and he was one of my heroes actually. He was an Australian guitar playing, just a wonderful play. Kind of Larry Carlton-esque, I guess.
Okay. Yep.
From Perth originally. Anyway, he was assistant engineering at Trafalgar Studios, where we recorded Life Support.
Yep. That's in Sydney,
he helped
isn't
me
it?
out.
You guys had come up to Sydney for that. Yep.
Yeah. Well, no, we'd moved. By this time, we'd already moved.
Oh, okay.
We'd moved to Sydney from Adelaide, so I was living in Sydney by now. That was Trafalgar Studios down there in Trafalgar Street, Annandale. I'm not sure if it still exists. Mm-hmm. But beautiful studio, fantastic. So that was a bit of a Life Support was a bit of a the duck thing where you're trying to look cool, we're paddling like crazy underneath trying to figure it out.
Yeah, right. Wow. And that album, that as you mentioned earlier, that broke in the States. I think got to number 3. Lost in Love got to number 3 on the Billboard charts. And
Lost in Love, number 3. Did it not eventually hit number 1? I think it.
Okay, I may have done. Yeah.
It entered the charts at I think maybe it entered at number 3. It was really high, like 6 or 7 or something like that.
Wow. Entered
the charts in the States, I think around like 6 with a bullet. And if it says with a bullet, it's going to go number 1.
Okay.
And so it was only in the charts at not number 1 for a week. The next week it went number 1, and it stayed there forever. So we had 5 straight number 1s. Wow. It's interesting. We're great fans, and I'm good friends with the guys, with Glenn and Beeb and Graham from LRB.
Yeah, I was going to mention them. Little River Band and to some extent AC/DC probably were the only other Australian bands that had made some sort of dent in the US market. So you guys were definitely one of the pioneers of opening the US door.
At the time, yeah. I mean, look, LRB I think were doing it before us. They were playing some pretty. They did a lot of support gigs initially. Mm-hmm. Through the late 70s. We had an opportunity to do a tour through the States supporting somebody my age, doing a support gig anyway for a fairly popular artist at the time, and we decided not to do it because Lost in Love had just come into the charts and gone number 1 the next week.
Yeah.
So we actually bailed on that tour and held out for just a few more months because we believed that if the song was that strong, we could possibly headline our own tour, and that had never been done.
Wow.
Where you actually have an Australian band come in cold, headlining their own tour. Mm-hmm. And that's exactly what we did. So we never supported anybody to get our name out.
That's amazing.
Which is amazing, actually. I understand it and appreciate it a lot more today than I did then.
Sure.
And like they weren't little gigs. I mean, we were playing arenas. We were playing big stuff straight away. So it was pretty amazing time. But yeah, look, huge respect for the guys with Little River Band because, quite frankly, they were out there doing it before anyone else was doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was Was it Glenn? I think Glenn Wheatley was playing. Was he?
He was managing.
He was managing, wasn't he? Yeah. So he was like pushing down a lot of doors and. Yeah.
Yeah. No, he did a lot of really good work. Really good work. Amazing.
Yeah, wow. So here you are. You're still a young bloke. You've sort of jumped out of 4 or 5 nights of covers a week, and you're headlining around the States. What was that like for you? What was that shift like?
It was pretty intense, I guess. It was great. Look, the truth is, Matty, I never kind of longed to be famous. That was never really my goal. Mm-hmm. It never has been my goal. All I ever wanted to do was just continue to grow as a player and play with other musicians that were of greater depth in standard. I was going to say greater standard, but that's probably a little bit too broad an description.
Okay.
Not just great players, but mate, there are great, amazing technicians out there. You can go down to the local pub, or you used to be able to,
Yeah.
go down to the local pub and see incredible bands play. I mean, honestly, they're just kicking it and doing original stuff in some cases.
Yeah.
And you think, why aren't these guys kicking it? Well, it's because they're not leaving that deposit. They're not. They're trying to sound like somebody else.
Okay.
They haven't discovered their own voice, which is paramount. If you really want to be it's not about playing really fast or having all the chops. I mean, that's very important and great.
Mm-hmm.
But what's more important is when you pick up a guitar and play a single note or strum a chord, does the air change? Does something happen in the vicinity of your playing that causes people to melt? To respond. And that's actually all that matters.
Wow.
I think.
How do
that's
you?
the purpose of music.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but how did you develop that in your own playing then? When did you feel that was sort of happening?
Well, I think, look, that did, after our wonderful friend from Moyse sat down and had a little chat with me.
Yeah.
I really did go back to, Cos Russo, the keyboard player in the band back then. He gave me an exercise. He said, Dave, I'm going to give you initially 5 notes.
Mm-hmm.
So I had the pentatonic scale, basically.
Yeah.
To do a solo on. And you can't go out of the octave. You've just got to stay within those 5 notes. And we would practice. So we'd go round and round playing various changes and use them also in a modal way, if you like, working around the modes,
yeah,
to really get your ear accustomed to how the various modes sound. But to do a solo with just 5 notes, and then we'd break it down to 4 notes, break it down to 3 notes, break it down to 2 notes.
Wow.
Now do a solo, play something meaningful with 2 notes.
Yeah, full
How
on.
do you? So what have I got to use now? I've got 2 notes, only 2 notes, no octaves. So I have timbre. I've got whether I've got a bright sound, a sharp sound, soft sound, loud, soft, vibrato. So you find yourself going to you want to try and bring pathos.
Uh-huh.
You're trying to talk or speak a conversation with just 2 notes.
Wow.
And it's not easy because you actually have to get in touch with your own heart.
Okay.
You actually have to get kind of real with yourself. And look, the greatest artists, whether they be musicians, painters, sculptors, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
it's not about technique. It's about emotion.
Yeah.
You notice I'm talking about that a lot because
Sure.
it really is the key. So I think it's just really, for me, it was sitting down on the edge of my bed and like I'd play a straight C chord. I just let the pick fall across the strings very gently,
Mm-hmm.
and listen to the tone, listen to the way it sounded, and let it kind of get inside me. So you got to kind of stop, be still, and listen.
Okay. Cool, man.
And there's something I learned from Angus actually, and this is just from AC/DC, just by observing him. You may remember me saying this to you guys. If there is one guitar player in the world that is relaxed, it's him.
Uh-huh.
I mean, he is running all over the place,
Yeah.
playing Highway to Hell and all the songs.
Yeah.
You have a look at his shoulders,
Yeah.
and his right and left hands. They are so loose,
Yeah.
and they're like rubber. They're just relaxed as anything.
Yeah.
And he's a very light player. He doesn't play hard. He's got a super light touch.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of really spoke to me too, because in fact, most players that I respect have a very relaxed, light touch.
Okay.
It's quite, yeah.
Cool. And yet Angus obviously still brings a lot of intensity, like bucket loads, but still from that
Yeah, but
relaxed kind of state.
Exactly, yeah,
Yeah,
and
cool.
that's why his his solos and his grooves and his riffs and everything are so powerful. They've got such incredible weight. He can play it on an acoustic guitar and it would still have the same weight
Hmm.
because it's what's coming from inside him. It's where it's coming from.
Yeah, right.
So
Awesome.
then you put that through a stack of Marshalls, and my goodness, it's immovable. It's a train that you can't stop.
Yeah. Back to the Air Supply then, Dave. So
Yes,
you guys, so you're touring the States, but there's albums coming out pretty much every year. I think 81 was the one that I love, 82 Now and
yeah,
Forever, 83
yeah,
Greatest Hits. Like these are really big records of really big singles. And
yeah.
so were you still touring? Um,
Every year, yeah.
yeah,
The would typically go. Trying to remember now. I think around June or early June-ish, we'd sort of go on tour. So basically, summer.
somewhere in the
We'd
States.
head
Yeah,
up. We'd head over for the summer. So we'd head over a couple of weeks early, rehearse up the new show
yeah.
on a sound stage, and go out for a few months. Sometimes they were 2 months, 4 months. I remember one tour that was the last tour I did was. I think it started off as a 3 month tour and kept on getting added to, and ended up being an 8 month tour. So
Wow.
that was pretty tough. So yeah, and so during that time there's writing, and then the time off was relaxing, trying to come down off the tempo of the tour because
Hmm.
it's quite a pace you're on,
Uh-huh.
and recording a new album. Yeah, sometimes we'd do some demos along the way in
Yeah.
studios.
So you,
But most of the recording during my time anyway was done in Australia.
okay. So you come back home and get the
Yeah.
albums together. What was your touring rig like back then?
Touring rig was very simple. As you mentioned before, Ibanez came on board and supported us.
Hmm.
We had the first sort of cut down like a 335 mini 335 body artist
An artist, yeah, yeah.
series. I think this is around the time Lee Ritenour was using the
Oh,
kind of
okay.
335 kind of
Yep,
thing artist series.
yep.
So we actually went over to the factory and they put together a hybrid guitar for each of us, both for Rex and I,
Yeah,
to what we wanted. Basically, they built it the way we wanted it. So,
that's awesome.
um, yeah, and they were fantastic guitars. Actually, there was the Artist Series hollow body,
Yep.
and I don't know what their numbers are. Then we had another one that was just sort of like a double cut away Les Paul solid body.
Oh, okay. Which is still, I think,
Um,
the artist series is that kind of,
Still the Artist Series, yeah,
but
but
a
without the
solid.
F hole, so it was a
Yeah, right.
solid, yeah. And that guitar was just spectacular, I must say. That's probably to this day, when it comes to solid body guitars like the Les Paul style,
Yeah.
that's still probably the best guitar I've ever played. It was amazing.
Wow, that's awesome. So when you say the factory, because I think you were touring Japan at this stage as well. Is that the Ibanez factory in Japan?
Yeah, yeah. Air Supply was and still is massive in Asia.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, we were absolutely adored over there.
Yeah.
And still, even the younger ones still to this day love the old songs. So
Yeah.
um,
Cool.
a lot of our touring was up in Asia.
Hmm.
Um, so it was mainly America and throughout Asia. It
Okay.
was that they were the primary markets. Europe really never took off for Air Supply,
Okay.
not in a big way.
Sure. So so that semi-hollow artist, they
Yeah,
actually put your names in the inlay. Hey, on the 12th fret, it's like David Moyes
that's right.
and
Yeah.
Rex Go on Rex
A
guitar.
Rex Go too. Yeah, yeah. I've
That's
still
fantastic.
got that hollow body. Actually, it's a beautiful guitar.
It's great. In fact, you let me use it on a session once, and that was pretty exciting for me. That was cool.
That's right. I remember. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I thrashed away on lots of your guitars. You're very generous. Um,
Uh,
so you're playing these artists. I think I've seen you play a Blazer. Did you have a Blazer around that time, or was
that's
that later?
right. You're right too. Yeah, I had a blue Blazer. That was a killer guitar. The pickups on those guitars. I mean, I swapped out the pickups for various, incantations of Strat type pickups,
Hmm.
but ended up going back to the originals.
Okay.
They were fantastic. They were really. It was Strat-esque, but not really. It kind of
Yeah.
had its own sound and really thick. The mid range was real ballsy, very punchy,
Okay.
and a beautiful guitar to play. It was actually a lovely guitar. I don't know. I probably sold that at some stage.
Uh-huh.
I know it's crazy. I've always been a bit of a, if I'm using it and it's working for me, I keep it. Once it's lost its, now value, I get rid of it, which maybe I shouldn't have done that over the years. But anyway, that's what I did. So
How about what about amps and effects and things? What would you take on a
yeah,
huge
on the
tour?
road we used Music Man amps.
Okay.
It was a 212, 212, no, 112, sorry. And they were stuck behind little screens. So yeah, look, so the Music Man 112, I think it was a 100 watt amp
Uh-huh.
or 85 watt amp, using 6L6s. So very, very, I mean, Music Man are fairly Fender-esque,
Fendery
really,
kind of
in a
deal,
way.
yeah.
Pedals was the one and only Tube Screamer,
Yes.
the original 808. A Boss, is it CE1? The
Oh, the chorus?
chorus,
The
yeah, chorus sort
little
of
blue
vibrato
chorus? The
thing.
first, yeah, right.
No, large, big kind of
Oh, the big grey box.
the big grey
And it's
box,
got two
yeah,
buttons. I think
yeah,
one's maybe a
beautiful,
speed switch.
big fat chorus,
Oh
gorgeous.
yeah, yeah. And it's got like the
Um,
mains power hanging out of it. Hey,
exactly,
that's a serious
yeah.
pedal. Yeah.
Um, and that was pretty much it.
Wow.
It was just, and there might have been a compressor in there as well.
Okay.
Trying to recall, but it was a very, very simple rig, super simple rig.
Yeah.
No delays, not even a delay.
Mm-hmm.
Can you believe that? Amazing. These days, you can't play unless you've got a delay.
That's right. They don't let you play.
No, that's right. You're not in the door.
Hey,
Um,
you were working with Rex Go for a lot of this time. What was it like playing with him?
Rex is great. We see Rex initially came to Australia from Singapore via Adelaide. So he was always a local player here when I was like in my teens,
Oh,
a
okay.
young lad.
I always think of him as a
Um,
Sydney guy. I mean, obviously from Singapore, because he's been here for a long time, but
well, he
got down to
married.
Adelaide first.
Yeah, he's sort of a internationalist, mate. You ought to see what I'm looking at right now. It's just crazy. I'm looking across vineyards, right?
Yeah.
And there is this this storm. You might hear it. Here comes the rain,
Oh, yeah.
blowing across the fields in front of me, and it's just insane to watch it come across. Anyways, yeah. So Rex came over from Singapore to Adelaide. I think I don't really know. And when you chat to him, no doubt, or if you have already, his history will probably make itself more clear
Yeah, sure.
than I understand it. I know he was in Adelaide for quite a while, playing in various cover bands. He married a Melbourne girl who was in the Navy,
Uh-huh.
but he was also, I believe, I'm not sure if he was part of Jesus Christ Superstar, because I think that was Mark McEntee
Oh,
who
okay.
was playing guitars in Jesus Christ Superstar. I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
From
And
the Divinals.
he went into the vinyls, yeah. And did he do some of the early Air Supply stuff before your time, perhaps?
Mark McEntee did, and Rex did too. Yeah.
Okay.
So, I'm not sure if they actually played together or
Yeah,
if they
right.
played at separate times. Yes, they did. I think they did. I think one of the band's incantations was Rex and Mark McEntee. So when I joined the band, it was a fresh start.
Yeah.
We did live support.
Yeah.
So all the harmony parts, all those double guitar lines, I wrote and put together on the first album. When we had to go on tour,
Mm-hmm.
obviously you can't do it. So
Yeah, yeah.
we got Frank, who had arranged all the strings to join the band to play keys,
Yeah.
and invited Rex to come along, which was a great thing to do, obviously, because he's wonderful experience and
Yeah.
beautiful player. So yeah, and that became kind of the core of the band for about 2 years. They came on board for I think the last 2.5 years
Okay.
of my time with the band, anyway.
Yeah, cool. There's a
So
There's a video live in Hawaii that I think was recorded around '83. So you and Rex were both on that, and
That's right.
the bits I've
That's
seen,
right.
man, you guys were a great guitar team. Yeah, those harmony
They were a
parts.
great guitar team, and that was a killer band. And that's an interesting video to watch because there are absolutely no overdubs. That was what happened on the night. And I'll tell you what, it's pretty amazing. For its time, it was really, really well done. Great playing, well recorded, great performance. So. Rex, I think our first tour we did together, we roomed together. Mm-hmm. That's fun. What happens on the tour stays on tours. And the second tour, actually the last couple of tours, we all had our own rooms, which was kind of fun.
Okay.
But yeah, no, it was great.
Cool.
Wonderful player, great man. Yeah,
good stuff. So you finished up, I don't know, around the mid-'80s, sometime around there, you wrapped up with Air Supply?
Well, yeah, it was an interesting... In fact, the Air Supply have just come through Adelaide a month or two ago and caught up with the guys, and we chatted about this particular episode because it was... I've caught up with Graham and Russell whenever if I was in the States and within, a cheap enough airfare, I'd go and say hello. I've been doing that for the last, 30 years.
Yeah. Okay.
We caught up and I hung out for a while before and after the concert. What happened was our management changed, and this is just a bit of backstory that may or may not want to be published. I don't know. Changed from our Australian management to a guy called Don Arden, who was synonymous with bands like ELO and Ozzy Osbourne, and he was the father of Sharon Osbourne.
Oh, okay.
So he was known as, which he didn't mind being called, the godfather of rock and roll, for good reason. And that's enough be said there.
Okay, yeah.
Anyway, he became our both band manager and personal manager as well of each member. So he was my manager for about a year and a half, 2 years. So, but when he came on board, kind of the tone of the band changed quite remarkably, actually.
Okay.
The spirit of the band, if you like. And for me, from my view, probably not in the best way.
Right.
But for Graham and Russell, probably the best, because it brought about, probably a little more control, a bit more income and that sort of thing, which is perfectly right. I mean, that's those two guys, they're the band, really. Even though while I was with the band, it was pretty much a band kind of an arrangement.
Okay.
If you know what I mean. We all had our own fan bases and we were promoted as a band. rather than just Graham and Russell.
Yeah.
Anyway, the long and short of that is that on a Sunday morning, I received a call from Graham, I think it was. I was just getting ready to kind of head back to LA for the 1983 tour.
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh, yeah, Russell's on the phone." Rusty got on the phone and said, "Dave, how you going?" And so, "Yeah, good." And he said, "Listen, we've had a bit of a change of things here, and we've decided we found a new guitar player. So for anybody that actually hears this, if it gets to air,
yeah.
and you ever get to the situation, it's an interesting situation. We've made a decision to get a new guitar player and bass player as well, and also two new guitar players actually. So would you mind? So look, it's been great, wonderful, terrific, good run. See you down the line. And by the way, would you mind ringing up Rex and Dave and let them know that they're no longer in the band either?"
Oh, no.
And that's exactly what I did. And
Oh,
as far as I know, to this day, neither of them have received a personal phone call.
Oh, wow. That's pretty heavy.
It's pretty trippy.
Yeah.
But I don't. Honestly, man, I don't know. Maybe these days. It was a bit of a shock, obviously, because you were getting ready to keep moving forward.
Sure.
But things happen, things happen in life, and you just got to go with it. You got to roll with the punches and move forward. And everything has its reason and purpose without getting too philosophical.
Mm-hmm.
You can either let things kind of mess you up or, make you strong in the right way, not bitter. So I think it's a bit sad that neither of the guys ever received a phone call, but
yeah,
they did get letters in the mail.
Right.
So that was the end of that
Okay.
formation of the band, and Ralph the drummer remained for another, I think, 9 or so years.
Okay.
And Frank continued on until he died in '86 of AIDS. So now pretty much the band they've got now, they've had for the guitar player they've had for about 8 years now. So and they do a great job.
Sure. I think you could argue fairly strongly your era and that of Rex's as well was probably, in terms of creative output, the heyday, really. I think you guys... Yeah.
I do believe, and this is sort of independent of Air Supply, but I learnt this, obviously... I probably learnt this back in the Jules days, but it became very evident during my time with Air Supply that a certain combination of players, certain combination of people produces a certain sound.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can go out and change out, get a different guitar player and treat it like, I just need a guitar player and he'll fill the bill.
Yeah.
Well, and that'll work, but you will get a different sound and it will be a different emotional impact on the listener, whether you like it or not.
Mm-hmm.
So we had that particular bunch of guys. It really did become. We were all pretty high level players. We were very respectful of each other. We loved having good fun, and so that all brought, when you bring that to the stage and also to the creative process.
Yeah.
See, once Rex joined the band, the albums we'd do, he and I would sit down together and work out the lines together.
Mm-hmm.
Where in the early days, I'd just do it all myself.
Sure.
So obviously you're going to get the Rex's flavour in there then as well. So, things will only, if you do it well, things will only grow and get better, but as soon as you change that, it's going to be different. Yeah. And you can hear it. As soon as they changed the lineup, it became Meatloaf, basically, because they got Jim Steinman.
Jim Steinman was writing,
Yeah, he came on board, and pretty much everything they wrote for the next album or two was Meatloaf, with Russell singing.
Okay.
So, and he was, of course, Meatloaf was huge at the time.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So, look, it could have been, I said this to Russell just 2 months ago. I said, look, we could have gone two ways. And this is me saying, my view. We could have done a Rolling Stones and just kept going as we were. And it's you could argue that it would have kept on going at a very, very high level for a long, long time. As it was, what happened was never had another number one. I don't think they ever had another top 10.
Mm-hmm.
I could be wrong on that, but plenty of songs released, and they were lovely songs, and people loved them. And not all great songs, but the thing is, they've had a career that has continued and never stopped, and they've worked really, really hard, and they've been very, very successful. And I'm a great admirer of them both.
Yeah, that's cool. And great, you're still in touch. That's really testament to your attitude as well as theirs.
Yeah, well, some of the other band members haven't done it quite so well, but
Yeah, as you mentioned.
but that's all right. The thing is, I'm here on this planet to do what I'm meant to do. And if it's for them, great. If it's not, great.
All right, that's part one of my interview with David Moyse. Man, I loved hearing all those stories. Imagine getting punched in the chest when you're taking a solo. That's kind of cool. Oh man. Hey, some of the audio in the interview I used, some of the Air Supply tunes were from that video live in Hawaii, and I found it hard to find a clean version. So some of the audio, as you heard, was a little bit crunchy. A nice pristine version would sound awesome, but man, how good is the playing? How epic is the solo in "Close My Eyes"? That was a longer sound excerpt I had in the middle of the interview. I feel like I should talk about it a little bit. So what you're hearing at first is Rex, Go, and Dave playing those harmony parts. Sounded really cool. And then there's that vocal sort of bridge, and then Dave just rips it. Man, so good. Now check out the if you have a look on YouTube, you'll find clips of this. And Dave and Rex are both playing matching blue Ibanez Blazers. It's very cool. All right, next week we conclude our interview with David, and we talk about what he got up to after Air Supply. And as I mentioned at the front of the show, he ended up doing some really cool sessions. We find out about that. Ended up playing in the Hillsong worship band and really touring the world, and that led to some other tours with some really notable musicians that we find out about. And we talk about David's recent induction into the South Australian Music Hall of Fame. Very, very well deserved. Alright, I'm just about finished here, but remember, you can check out all our past episodes if you look us up, Guitar Speak Podcast, on the iTunes podcast site. You can subscribe to us there as well. You can do exactly the same thing at Stitcher. Really great way to get your podcast delivered to your device. Also, we're at guitarspeakpodcast.libsyn.com. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. We'd love to hear from you. If you're enjoying the episodes, please share them around. It really helps us get the word out. But anyway, I'm out of here. My name's Matt Wakeling. Thanks for joining me on the Guitar Speak podcast, and we'll see you next time. Bye now.